Story 1. I have a vintage rotary phone. My cable service requires a landline bundle. I found the phone at an antique mall and bought an adapter to make it work with the cable modem. I enjoy the large handset and the fun of spinning the dial. Story 2. Without a doubt, I prefer wired headphones. I never have to charge or pair them. If one falls out of my ear, it does not bounce into a sewer grate or onto the subway tracks. It just hangs there, waiting for me. Story 3. I have a typewriter. If I want something printed, such as recipes, lists, or physical notes, I will type it so I do not have to find a printer or have other people deal with my handwriting. Besides, the typewriter is more satisfying to use. Story 4. Not me. My mother does. She refuses to use Spotify or any other music streaming service. She insists on compact discs. She has loads of them. Story 5. Nintendo 64 still has some of the best party games that my older friends still know how to play. Story 6. My iPod is tiny, colorful, and barely weighs anything. Perfect. Story 7. I use paper maps to plan long road trips and Waze while driving, but I keep a door pocket full of maps in case I need them. Story 8. I use Winamp on my computer to play MPEG-1 audio layer 3 files. It still kicks the llama's ass. Story 9. I only buy used phones. My current phone is a 2021 Samsung Galaxy that I bought last year. Story 10. A clock radio to wake me up in the morning. It also helps me avoid using my phone at night because I do not use it as an alarm and keep it away from my bed. Story 11. A regular wristwatch, analog or digital, but not a smartwatch. I like not having to check my phone to see the time. I recently broke my phone and spent 3 days without it while it was being repaired. I did not realize how amazing it feels to be disconnected and how few places nowadays have clocks on the walls. When I was younger, they were everywhere. Not a single restaurant, office, or gym had a clock on the wall. Story 12. My car is one of the last to be equipped with a factory-installed cassette tape player, and I have tapes to play in it. Story 13. I bought this digital alarm clock in 1990. It still works and never faltered once. It has outlasted smartphones, tablets, televisions, cars, girlfriends, friendships, and computers. Story 14. When I am at home, I use my laptop instead of my phone. I am not sure if that counts. Story 15. Not technically technology, but I still keep my checkbook balance by pen and paper. Story 16. Normal car controls and items. Keys, handles, and physical buttons. Story 17. I have hundreds of compact discs and digital versatile discs. I hate the idea of losing my entire collection because I could not afford a subscription or because a company decided to stop supporting a device. Story 18. I use a drying rack to hang dry clothes. It saves a little on my power bill, prevents lint from collecting in the vents, and makes my clothes last longer. Story 19. Digital camera. I like to review the photos and choose some to print. Otherwise, my siblings will not have a photo album to look through when they are older. Story 20. My old drafting tools. Protractor, angles, French curves. Story 21. Physical media. If a licensing deal expires or I cancel a subscription, my Blu-ray discs do not disappear from the shelf. I still like to buy compact discs and rip them to MPEG-1 audio layer 3 files myself. My formative experiences with MPEG-1 audio layer 3 files were during the Kazaa and LimeWire era, when their quality was often very poor, so I became accustomed to making my own. Story 22. I'm not using my smartphone right now, but I often think about switching back to a dumb phone. I'm so fucking addicted to my smartphone that it makes me sick. Story 23. I have a wireless drill that never has to be recharged. It is elegant and probably about 100 years old. It has rosewood handles and was designed by someone who took pride in their work. Can do most jobs around the house. Look up egg beater drill. These drills work great. Story 24. I always use a physical calculator at work instead of a smartphone like everyone else. Story 25. This is an analog camera. More specifically, it is my medium format Kowa camera made in the 1960s. Story 26. Paper maps. Something just feels right when using one. I do not know why, but I always love using them. Story 27. A hand-turned can opener. A lemon juicing dish. A knife used instead of a food processor. A bowl and spoon used instead of a mixer. A rolling pin. I have 3 floor looms and weave textiles as a hobby. Story 28. I started collecting vinyl records 2 years ago. I am almost at 100 albums now. Story 29. I keep a written check register to track the bank account I use to pay bills. I can look online to see the totals, but I prefer a running tally in a paper ledger. Story 30. Today I learned Reddit thinks old means outdated. Wired headphones and handwriting with a pen may be old methods but are not outdated. Story 31. According to Microsoft, my Windows 10 computers. All jokes aside, I like fountain pens, typewriters, valve amplifiers for my guitar, though I appreciate and rely on digital gear, manual transmission vehicles, with stoves in winter and mechanical keyboards. I even fish with reels made in the 1950s and 1960s because they are the cat's pajamas. Story 32. I use every one of my video game systems, from the Vectrex through the current generation, including 52 consoles and handhelds. Story 33. I don't think they will ever be truly outdated. String lines and plumb lines are useful even when a project calls for a green laser guide. Story 34. I carry a pocket watch from 1871. My competition rifle, with which I have won multiple medals, was manufactured in 1854. My previous competition rifle, which I used in the flintlock category, was manufactured in 1723. I have an actual rotary phone connected to a landline. I set it up between my house and my gate. I keep an Atari 5 2016 32 frequency modulation computer and a Commodore 64 in regular service. The Commodore 64 runs full-time, probably 12 to 14 hours a day. One of my daily drivers is a 1962 Chrysler. I have 3 such vehicles, one in each country where I run a business. Story 35. Does Winamp count? I still use version 5.x because the newer releases broke the jump to search function. I just did the math the other day and realized I have been using it for about 25 years. Oof. Story 36. A compact disc player and a regular typewriter were used instead of a computer and a printer. Story 37. The wired headphones are apparently outdated, but I prefer them. A physical calculator is my go-to as well. Story 38. A scythe is relaxing and doubles as a Halloween costume. Story 39. I like using a regular tape measure. It is also useful for poking friends in the butt from across the room. Story 40. A Zune in a dock hooked to my late 1970s stereo receiver sounds fantastic. Story 41. Amplitude modulation and frequency modulation radios work even in the house. I have a little weather radio that picks up amplitude modulation, and I can listen to baseball games all through the season even though the greedy television networks will not show anything without a subscription. Baseball on the airwaves is how it has always been, and I hope it never stops. Story 42. 1963 Magnavox television. 1950 Grundig radio. 1980 Tandy Radio Shack Model 80 computer. 1960s rotary phones. Man, I am old. Story 43. A typewriter is nice. You can type a letter or a note without dealing with word processors, printers, or other devices. It does not require any power. Story 44. I am not sure this fits perfectly. I refuse to use cell phones. I use computers for everything. My family hates that. Once they gave me a cell phone and added me to their family plan with their kids and so on. After a year, I gave it back and stopped using it. I use my computer and Facebook Messenger to talk with them when I am home, but when I am out of the house, I am free from having to check for messages every 2 minutes. Story 45. I am a Blu-ray collector. I still watch the movies I love with my ultra-high-definition player. Story 46. I am currently using a 15-year-old Acer Aspire X3960 and still running Windows 11, along with an even older Bank G2220 high-definition monitor from 2009. My newer AM5 motherboard socket system constantly had issues, And now even the 7950X central processing unit is dead. It feels as if too many things today are not built to last. Story 47. I do not know whether it is outdated. I sometimes use a tick stick. Story 48. I love vinyl records so much. I also have compact discs, but I don't use them as much for some reason. Story 49. My dad gave me his Sanyo stereo system from the late 1980s, which includes a record player, a dual tape deck, and a compact disc player, along with a large portion of his record collection. It gets a lot of use at home. Story 50. I use a Palm OS personal digital assistant, specifically a Palm Tungsten T3. All of my appointments, templates, memos, and other data are still on it. Alternative personal information managers and organizers on Android and the iPhone operating system did not sit well with me. Story 51. I own a Nintendo dual-screen Lite, a novelty I received for Christmas in 2022, and a Nintendo three-dimensional screen, which I have had since I was 9 years old. Story 52. Analog two-way radios. Like most amateur radio operators, I have a collection of them. Story 53. I still send messages using the text on 9 keys predictive text system, not the version where you press a key several times to get a letter. Story 54. I have an MPEG audio layer 3 player from prison. When I went through the Transportation Security Administration after my release, an agent asked what it was and how it worked. This occurred in 2024. Story 55. I'm a history major. I own several swords and take perverse glee in the confusion I cause when I take a World War I vintage handgun to the local shooting range. Story 56. I still use an iPod. It does not take up space on my phone with an app, drain my phone battery, or have music interrupted by notifications or paid subscriptions to remove ads. I also put music on it that you cannot find on Spotify or Apple Music. Story 57. I hope so. However, since they stopped updating it, it is becoming increasingly useless. Story 58. I still use a standalone calculator at work instead of my phone. Story 59. A large branch fell from my neighbor's tree recently, and they left it in the curb strip for 2 weeks. I found it unsightly. I did not want to gather extension cords to use the power saw, so I took an old-fashioned hand saw from my garage and cut the thick branch into firewood. The neighbor came out afterward and thanked me for the wood. I was played, but it is better than living next to an unkempt yard. Story 60. My cell phone is a 6-year-old OnePlus 8T. It is still awesome. I had a newer iPhone for a while, and I really tried to get into the whole Apple thing. I did not like it one bit. No control over the software. It assumes a lot about what I am trying to do. No options to customize the user interface. Just not for me. My car is a 2007 Toyota Sienna. It has no big screen, no subscription for heated seats, no direct injection that requires intake manifolds to be removed to walnut blast the intake runners on the head every 40,000 miles, and no electronic parking brake. Just a good van. Story 61. I subscribe to a newspaper. I just love the analog feel of paper with my coffee. Story 62. 120 medium format film cameras. I have a 1931 Kodak Brownie No. 2 Model F, a 1950s Kershaw 820 King Penguin, and a broken Kodak Cresta 3 that I picked up cheaply from various charity shops. I don't shoot them as much as digital or Polaroid SX70 and Polaroid 600 series, but I do love the way medium format film looks. Story 63. Me too. I love to walk outside, grab the paper, and read it while I eat breakfast. It is much more pleasurable than reading it on my phone. Story 64. I love my indoor plumbing, most of which predates personal computers by decades. Story 65. I sometimes use InfoSelect, a personal information manager for the disk operating system, running on the DOSBox emulator. Story 66. I have started wanting to physically own all my media rather than relying on subscriptions, so I am starting to collect digital video discs. Story 67. I recently bought a Rolodex in the past 5 years for all the various logins I need to keep for work. It is stored in a locked cabinet, so I suppose it is somewhat safe. Story 68. I am a Luddite. I switched to Bluetooth when I realized that while wired headphones and earbuds sound fine, the connectors, such as universal serial bus and 3.5mm plugs and others, are as unreliable as a 1984 Dodge. Story 69. Oh grief, where to start? I still prefer compact discs, a top-of-the-range player from 1986, valve amplifiers and speakers from the early 1970s, a fountain pen and dip pens for cards and special occasions, wired headphones for better quality, and cameras from the 1960s. Story 70. Old-school iPod video. My battery needs to be replaced or I would be using it all the time. It does not stay charged very long. Story 71. A sextant is super handy when Google Maps is offline. Just kidding. I wouldn't know how to use one if my life depended on it. Story 72. Dad owns a 1947 Jeep Willys civilian Jeep 2A, the first civilian model made after World War II. It is how I learned to drive a manual transmission. It has hauled us and our gear all over the mountains, taught me a lot about mechanics and cars, and still runs like a top. I love that vehicle. Story 73. Wooden pencils provide light friction as the tip scrapes the paper, giving better tactile feedback than any stylus or mechanical pen. They also reduce hand jitter because they require slightly more force to move the tip. Story 74. Too many things. Pens and pencils, paper, typewriters, a wind-up alarm clock, standalone digital and film cameras, a mechanical watch, an adding machine, and occasionally a flip phone. That is just what is on my desk. I used to love technology, but nowadays it is all data theft, tracking, and advertising. Story 75. I have a Panasonic plasma television that I bought nearly 15 years ago, and it is still going strong. Story 76. Not completely outdated, but I still charge most of my Apple devices with a 5-watt universal serial bus Type A charger from 2008. It is probably not true, but I have decided that slower battery charging will preserve battery life. Story 77. A 2009 Mazda 3. It was inexpensive and got decent gas mileage. Get over it. Story 78. Pens, paper, scissors, paper clips, staplers, cellophane tape, binders, physical folders, analog clock. Story 79. Listening to a whole album on my turntable is such a nice part of my night. Story 80. I have a Mac Plus. Every Christmas we still play the Oregon Trail and save our game for posterity. It is really impressive for its age. Story 81. My 1974 Seabook jukebox holds 80 45s for a total of 160 songs. I keep it in my mid-century modern basement with a bar, tables, a 1950s baby blue fridge, and a mineral oil rain lamp. I love that space. Story 82. I still use an early Garmin Global Positioning System unit from the 1990s. It looks like old 8-bit video games compared to modern maps and topography, but the batteries last forever and it is accurate, reliable, and rugged. There is no reason not to use it. Story 83. I still watch television on a cathode ray tube every day. I use Windows 8. One on my desktop computer, laptop, and tablet. For the common area behind my house, I use a low-pressure sodium light introduced in the 1920s that is about as efficient as modern light-emitting diodes and is better for wildlife and the view of the sky. Story 84. My iPods each contain 675 songs. I use them in my cars to avoid Bluetooth pairing problems with my phones because the cars are older. Story 85. Well, I do not use it, but it is funny that doctors still use fax machines. Story 86. iPhone 6 with cheap, wired Skullcandy earphones. From my cold, dead hands, Apple. Blame me for your lack of never-ending quarterly growth all you want. Story 87. A record player. I still have some of my dad's records from the 1970s. Story 88. I use iPods so I can turn off my phone and just listen to music. Story 89. My Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo 64, and GameCube are connected to my cathode ray tube television and a capture card to record gameplay. I mostly use the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Story 90. I jailbroke my PlayStation 3, and now it plays my PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 games. I have a pretty big collection of games, and I've barely made it through any of them. I'll be playing them until I'm 90 or so. Story 91. I have a modern MPEG-1 audio layer 3 player with massive storage capacity, Bluetooth, and pass-through so I can plug it into an auxiliary input and play audio from my iPhone. It is a touchscreen Sony Walkman. Story 92. A fountain pen is a Pilot with a stainless steel nib and ink cartridges. I love the way it writes. Story 93. I buy cassette tapes as fun, inexpensive collectible band merchandise. I have more shirts than I can wear, and tapes take up very little space. Story 94. Analog clocks and watches, floor lamps, record players, vacuum tubes, audio receivers, cassette decks, Betamax video cassettes, laser discs, digital versatile discs, compact discs, mini discs, older game consoles, and wired headphones. Story 95. The iPod. I have 4. I have refurbished them all in various ways and have flash modded them. I dislike streaming, especially because nothing I want to listen to is available on streaming services. My own band, old radio shows, and live bootlegs. Also, as someone else posted, I prefer wired headphones. Story 96. Excel. I cannot write a lick of code, but I can piece together pivot tables, vertical lookups, and conditional sum functions to produce impressive results. Story 97. I do not use a dip pen and ink for everyday writing. I use it for fancy things and art because it looks nicer than a ballpoint pen. Story 98. My Game Boy Color and Nintendo 64. Windows experience. Typewriters and word processors. Albums on compact discs. 3. Num in floppy bits. Story 99. I have a Sony 60-disc changer stereo from 2003 that sounds better than your best Bose soundbar. Story 100. I bought an Xbox 360 console with Kinect and a few games for $80, and Grand Theft Auto 5 downloaded for a further $20. I finished the game's story, then completed it 100% by doing the side missions. Driving around Los Santos, occasionally answering distress calls, is what I do for fun sometimes. Story 101. The Palm Pilot personal digital assistant is made entirely obsolete by smartphones. It is satisfying to use and helps keep information organized. Story 102. I did not use them myself, but quite a few people use horses. Story 103. I can't comfortably read books on a screen. I don't know why. I like my Zune. Is that outdated enough? Story 104. My car has a very antiquated internal combustion engine. Story 105. I don't have a landline at home, but I have one at work and use it for important calls because the call quality is much better. Story 106. Carburetors are popular because the cars they are attached to are almost always cool. Story 107. As a woodworker, I love using hand planes and hand drills. Story 108. I just bought a portable digital versatile disc player to watch some digital versatile discs I collected. Owning physical media feels more permanent than digital copies tied to streaming services. It also feels nostalgic. Story 109. I recently started collecting fountain pens and really enjoy them. It feels good to write with one, and there are many attractive inks available. Story 110. I recently learned about smart mugs. A regular mug just holds hot drinks, and if I leave it, the drink gets cold unless I put it on my decade-old mug warmer. I do not need the warmer most of the time. Story 111. Watching a movie or drama from a Universal Serial bus drive, I can't help feeling anxious whenever I stream content because of buffering and similar issues. Story 112. I have an old cassette Walkman, a portable compact disc player from Philips, and an iPod. If I could fix up my mini disc player, I would add that to the mix too. None of them are daily use items anymore, but they are fun. I also enjoy using a film camera occasionally. It is my dad's old Canon A1. Story 113. The original AirPods fit my ears perfectly. I have always used Apple headphones and have bought more pairs than I care to admit because they usually wear out after 2 years and I know I will eventually lose them. Story 114. I have a rotary phone in my kitchen. My grandmother rendered a home intruder unconscious with it in 1982, and it is now a family artifact. Yes, it works and I still use it. I hope I will not have to beat anyone with it. Story 115. I download lossless files for my music, and because I have an iPhone, I keep a very organized library on iTunes. Story 116. Buggy Whip. On Dasher, on Dancer, on Vixen, or I will slap your ass. Story 117. I still have an incandescent bulb. The filament is reinforced so it lasts. Story 118. I have a set of Life's Good Bluetooth headphones that wrap around my neck, with the earbuds attached by short wires to the main unit. I do not worry about them falling out. I can remove one earbud at a time and it stays in place. The sound is good. Story 119. Right now, I mostly use an old Sony radio. I can either plug it in or run it on batteries if the power goes out. Story 120. Nintendo 64, Nintendo GameCube, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, Game Boy Color, cathode ray tube television, video cassette recorder, and digital versatile disc player. Story 121. The International Business Machines Model M is the best keyboard ever. I have several that I use. Story 122. I keep a journal using a 1968 Remington typewriter that I thrifted. I love it. I am limited to one place to write, unlike a paper journal I could carry in a bag. But it makes writing much more of a ritual and intentional. Also, my handwriting is poor. I also have several film cameras. Most are from the late 1970s or early 1980s. What can I say? I like analog technology a lot. Story 123. I prefer a manual car. I'm not saying it's better. I just like it more. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.